But first, for weeks now, actress Rose McGowan, she was the star of shows like Charmed. She's had a lot to say, a lot. Among her list of accusations that she and other women were harassed, assaulted, and in some cases, including her own, allegedly raped by movie producer Harvey Weinstein. Investigators in multiple cities are taking these and other claims very seriously now. Several investigations are underway. The NYPD saying this week it believes it has enough to arrest Harvey Weinstein in connection with another woman's claims, though Weinstein denies all allegations of non-consensual sex. Yet there was always an element in Rose's story that, to some, seemed too crazy to believe. You know, that she was a little out there. She said she'd been silenced for 20 years. Really? That in person and behind the scenes she had been harassed and maligned and slut-shamed, as she put it. That dirt from her past, including a warrant for felony drug possession, was being secretly collected and unearthed simply to shame her. And a lot of people said, right? Like, okay, maybe she's telling the truth, like, it sounds a little... Well, as Rose put it, the monster's face was everywhere. To those who felt she was off the deep end, who dismissed her as an hysteric, guess what? It seems Rose was right all along. As they say, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean people aren't really out to get you. And it seems they were out to get Rose McGowan. They were. In ways you cannot imagine. And not just Rose, but others like her. Weinstein accusers. And not just the accusers, but the reporters to whom the accusers were telling their stories. And the reporters' editors in some cases. According to the latest reporting by Ronan Farrow in The New Yorker, came out late last night, citing dozens of pages of documents and 7 anonymous people directly involved, there was a secret, sophisticated, concerted conspiracy of intelligence-gathering operatives working together to intimidate, humiliate, and silence those who were accusing Harvey Weinstein. How? With former Israeli Mossad agents, identified targets, undercover aliases, espionage companies. In other words, in perhaps terms Harvey Weinstein might better understand, as of yesterday, the script became the Bourne Identity, the real-life one. There are details that astound in this matter, and we're going to get into those in a minute, but here is one. I'm going to try to get through this in one breath. You ready? Here is the allegation. Harvey Weinstein secretly paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to one of America's most powerful law firms, which arranged for a former Israeli Defense Forces officer who impersonated a woman's rights advocate to befriend Weinstein accuser McGowan and trick McGowan into spilling dirt on herself that Weinstein could then use to intimidate McGowan into silence. Can you believe, right? Rose McGowan reportedly met with this undercover agent at least 4 times. They went to the boardwalk together. They had ice cream together. They took a little stroll together and talked about Rose had been through this soft place for her to fall, woman next to her. And it was all a setup. The woman was a fraud. It turns out Rose McGowan was right. The monster's face was everywhere. And she was not crazy. To anyone who thinks the Weinstein machine was not grinding away in order to systematically silence women who dared to try to stop an alleged rapist, later today, I urge you to take a moment and read this entire article. Read the latest reporting in full in The New Yorker. It reads like a thriller. But in truth, it is a horror story that not just Rose, but others had to live as well. A spokesperson for Weinstein says, quote, "It is a fiction to suggest that any individuals were targeted or suppressed at any time." But we're going to talk about what's already on the record now and what's already been admitted by Weinstein's own lawyer, a guy you may remember named David Boies. Remember him? He argued Bush v. Gore for Gore. He lost. For more on this story, we are joined by NBC News national correspondent Kate Snow and NBC News investigative journalist Cynthia McFadden. Hello, ladies. Okay. A lot to unpack. A lot to unpack. All right, so let's just start. It's a fiction to suggest that any individuals were targeted or suppressed. How is that a fiction? David Boies has already... Tell him what he's already admitted.
I don't know, because Weinstein's attorneys have not responded to my repeated requests for comment last night. My phone calls and my emails were not returned, so I don't have anything to expand upon as far as their point of view. All I can go off of is what they've said in the New Yorker. But, I mean, this article is, you just described it, it is stunning. Let me read you one quote from the article from Ronan Farrow. Over the course of a year, the New Yorker reporting, Weinstein had agencies target or collect information on dozens of individuals and compile psychological profiles that sometimes focused on their personal or sexual histories. Weinstein monitored the progress of these investigations himself, personally.
Where did he find the time to make movies? You know, between all the alleged harassing.
A lot of energy.
Yeah. A lot of energy put into covering his own tracks. And now we read, as many suspected all along, that it wasn't just him. I mean, that he hired David Boies, who has come out. He was the man who ran point on this, the lawyer. He was Harvey's lawyer, respected lawyer, running point with the two investigative firms, the private detectives, basically.
Can I just say one thing, and then I'll let you, I'm sorry. 3 weeks ago, I had a very lengthy conversation on what we call background, meaning I can't name the person, but the person is an associate of David Boies, who told me in a half-hour conversation, Kate, listen to me. He has nothing to do with the legal team. He's not on the legal team. He's not defending Harvey Weinstein against these sexual harassment allegations. He has no part in this whatsoever. In the New Yorker, he admits he signed contracts.
Yeah, and an extraordinary thing. Let's just talk for one moment about David Boies. David Boies represented Al Gore in the Florida re-election. He was the lawyer who represented, who fought for equal rights in California. He is, as you know, Megyn, one of the most highly respected and regarded members of the bar. He in the New Yorker says, in retrospect, I knew enough in 2015 that I believe I should have been on notice of a problem and done something about it. Yeah. Well, the New York Times dismantles him this morning because the New York Times, one of the reporters who was targeted through this whole process was the New York Times reporter.
They were digging up dirt on the reporters.
And guess what? David Boies' law firm was representing the New York Times on various other matters.
So at the same time, he's running point on the investigative firms trying to discredit the women and the reporters, including the New York Times reporters. He's representing the New York Times on another matter.
Right. So
think of how irritated you'd be if you were the Times today.
Oh, here's what they say.
You don't have to imagine it.
Here's what they say. This, New York Times, this intolerable conduct, a grave betrayal of trust and a breach of the basic professional standards that all lawyers are required to observe.
It's not just him. So you've got the former Mossad agent strolling down the boardwalk with Rose McGowan, like, oh, you poor dear, what have you gone through? Right. Me too. She was claiming herself to be a Weinstein
victim. So much in common.
We have so much. She emailed her, I believe, 2 weeks ago. After the stories start coming out, after Rose McGowan's story goes public, she emails her and says, oh, you're so brave.
Yeah, hang in there. But it's not just the lawyers and the investigative firms. The media, the National Enquirer. I know you know the National Enquirer's credibility, okay? But this is different. This is different. The chief content officer was doing Harvey's bidding, was calling up Rose McGowan. An ex-boyfriend left his partner for Rose McGowan, calling up the woman, getting her on tape, because according to Ronan Farrow, and then celebrating with Harvey, saying, I've got it all on tape, wait until you see it. And now this guy at the National Enquirer, he's like, why wouldn't I protect this guy? I was in business with him on another project.
Yeah, he's saying he had a contract with Harvey. His defense is, I had a contract with Harvey Weinstein. I collected a bunch of information for him, but I didn't write any stories about it.
Yeah, but so you did your digging to try to discredit a rape accuser who you had no idea whether she was in fact a rape victim. I mean, the treatment of women systematically in this whole case is disgusting. It's disgusting.
I think it's really going to be a news headline for a lot of folks that these companies exist. These companies exist, which often employ former intelligence operatives. In this case, there were 3 different firms hired here, not just this former Mossad agent, but 3 other firms. That these companies exist to do what they call business intelligence. That just means that we're going to get as much dirt on our rivals, our competitors, or people who might be suing us as possible. Yep. They cover it up by using a law firm to hire the agencies. So
it can be privileged.
So,
right. So the lawyers don't have to reveal what was said.
And then here's what happens. Then the accusers come forward, you know, which takes a lot of guts. And this is the first thing they get asked. Why didn't you report? Why didn't you report earlier?
Yeah.
You know what? You and your why didn't you report question.
So
because I had
Asia-
Mossad agents walking me down the boardwalk, and these women knew, and she was dismissed as nuts. People have been saying that about Rose McGowan for a long time. I give you the last word.
No, there's another accuser this morning who tweeted, Asia Argento, she's an actress, one of the others who accuses Weinstein. She said, why didn't I, and then she names other women, speak up earlier? Quote, we were followed by ex-Mossad agents. Isn't that terrifying? Very.
I think the last word should go to Ronan Farrow. What an incredible piece of journalism.
Yep. Absolutely
hats
right.
off. Thank you, Ronan.
And one of the things that's so amazing about it is the on-the-record statements, like from Boyce. So that's what you need to check out when you read the article
also, the
later.
documents there, one of the contracts is embedded in the piece.
Want to finish with this. David Boyce did give a statement to the New Yorker talking about, his alleged conflict in representing the New York Times while trying to go after the New York Times reporters. If evidence could be uncovered to convince the Times that the charges should not be published, I did not believe and do not believe that that would be averse to the Times' interest, right? So he was trying to do everybody a solid.
Hello, Today fans. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking that button down there and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives.